Oh, how I love to be cozy. If there is anything that this pandemic has taught me, it is about how to embrace coziness. And I think that this time will be remembered for me as a time of learning what warmth means. And yes, finding the things that make me warm, because in the last year and a half, I have embraced the blanket. I have acquired or unearthed a series of blankets that serve all occasions. Lap blankets for kitten snuggles, a blanket to put across my shoulders when I sit in bed to read or journal, a blanket to hug when I feel lonely. A friend sent a weighted blanket. She came to swear by it during the pandemic, and I love to get fully under it or put it across my lap when I'm feeling antsy. And I even discovered a crochet blanket that my mom made on a visit back home, and one that was a gift from my grandmother. These blankets bring warmth, and they bring a sense of holding. The act of wrapping up in a blanket, it's a simple act of coziness. Blankets remind me of my own power to bring warmth, that even when things outside me make me feel out of control, frightened, or angered, that I can take a simple action that makes an atmosphere of warmth that extends around me. And yes, maybe it's less than an inch of fabric, but in choosing to put on that blanket, I am saying yes to warmth. Yes to the idea that I'm somebody who still needs to and wants to experience that feeling of hold me, rock me, calm and easy. Hold me, rock me, deep and wide. Oh, how that song invites me to bring joy into my body, to remember that I am a human being, not a human doing. That I was once small, that my heart is still tender. How this song helps me catch my breath. Now, I don't know about you, but at this time of year, honestly, I find it hard to catch my breath. December can be the time of the year from going from one thing to the next. Not too different from most times of the year, but in December, it is one thing to the next in the dark and in the cold in this part of the world. And it's the time when I didn't feel like getting up to exercise and the alarm went off in the pitch dark, and I did feel like adding some extra sugar to my diet for the 5th day in a row. This is a recipe for getting wound up, getting my tinsel in a tangle. And when I do pay attention to my breath, I don't always like what I discover. My breath feels ragged or shallow. It's not a cozy feeling. It's a sharp feeling or a dull feeling. Certainly not a warm feeling. And here's the other thing about that noticing, that ragged breath. This happens when I am holding my breath. And when I notice when I am holding my breath that I'm usually feeling something inside that I maybe am afraid to feel. Or maybe I'm afraid that something will happen, like I might get hurt, or I might be disappointed. And that isn't a matter of not opening to joy, but it's a matter of wanting to protect myself from the pain. And I know that I am not alone in this. When we hold our breath, it's protective. As human beings, in this way, we are not very much different from any other mammals. As we move through life, we have experiences that hurt us, or we witness others being hurt. And we begin to hold our breath, maybe to puff up our chest to appear a little stronger than we feel, maybe to get as quiet as possible, hoping a danger will pass us by unnoticed if we just hold in that exhale long enough. But different than mammals, we don't always have the skills or the safe environment to shake it off. And we can get stuck in these protective behaviors. Essentially, that bit of fear can stay with us. Some of us grow up in or as adults find ourselves in situations that are constantly stressful. And it can become natural to have our guard up consistently, to default to a shallow breath instead of a deep, full one. To breathe this way so regularly that a deep, full breath actually can feel unnatural or uncomfortable. So when we slow down, pause, stop, and notice our breath, sometimes what we notice is fear. And remember, we don't want to feel fear because it's not always a pleasant feeling. And then so sometimes we double down on the busyness, the not exercising, the sugar, whatever your process might be to get wound up, to get unbalanced. What's your favorite way? For us, this can be self-protective in the short term, but I know in the long term, what is going to maybe ultimately help me feel better is to unwind. So how do we move through that fear and that challenge? And here is where I look to the teachings of religion and psychology for guidance. And this is where coziness comes in. Because part of unwinding from feeling the fear and stress in our body is being able to bring warmth to fear, essentially to practice acceptance with our discomfort and to trust that it will pass. And for me, my Buddhist practice helps me understand that when I'm getting wound up, I'm going to do a lot to avoid recognizing that feeling of fear because I don't want to accept it, including indulging in some self-judgment. And here's what that might sound like. So I'll notice my breath is shallow, right? I pause, I slow down, and I notice, oh, my breath is shallow. And then a second judgment comes along, not as kind as the first. Judgment might be, I'm an aspiring minister with a meditation practice. Shouldn't my breath be smooth and steady? That kind of judgment is called the second arrow. When we make a judgment, the first arrow, my breath is shallow. Then we add on a second judgment. Shallow breath is bad. That's the second arrow. The second arrow says, I am breathing badly. I am bad. Ouch. Have you found yourself struck by the second arrow this season? When we notice the second arrow, Buddhism teaches us that there is a chance to apply self-compassion. My friends, this may be a disciplined process, but it is not an ascetic process. We do not have to traverse to the top of a mountain or sit on a wooden meditation bench on a stone floor to move through fear. We don't need to take the right course or find the right teacher because self-compassion is a simple practice of warmth. All that is necessary is a willingness and a blanket to wrap yourself up in. That wouldn't hurt either. So another way that I've learned to practice self-compassion is with gestures and words. So a gesture could be simply wrapping up in a blanket or just with your arms, or it could be through an imagined dialogue with the self. And here's how insight meditation teacher Tara Brach might suggest to phrase it. When you're feeling wound up, when you notice that shagged and shallow breathing, you might say, there, sweetheart. Of course you are concerned by your ragged breathing. Of course, slowing down and noticing your breath also meant that you slowed down and noticed the demands you're placing on yourself, the expectations you're trying to meet. And maybe now you're realizing you want something different for yourself. And it is okay. You are okay. It is okay to change course. It's okay that your breath got a little ragged. And it's okay to begin again in love. We might also find ourselves comforted by a song. Perhaps hold me, rock me, calm and easy. Hold me, rock me, calm, deep and wide. When we get wound up, a psychologist might ask, are we in or approaching the fight, flight, freeze response of the nervous system? And do any of those behaviors sound warm? I mean, maybe the fight, but not the flight. Running away in winter winds and freeze? Well, Peter Levine, a trauma specialist, gives advice on responding to fear or sadness or another emotion we might rather not feel that are true practices of coziness. Here's a little list. Hug yourself. Wrap up in a blanket. Put on your favorite warm outfit. Snuggle in the covers. Hug a pillow or a person or an animal. Lay with your head next to an animal's heart. Do a guided meditation about warmth. Get your heart rate up for 10 minutes by dancing, doing something aerobic, or taking a walk. Do some breathing exercises that generate warmth. These practices help us accept whatever feelings are coming when we feel the fear coming. When we do these practices, we accept the emotions that are there. And when the fear is allowed, and when those emotions are allowed to be, there can be a release of tension and maybe a release of feelings. It could be opening to joy, truly letting it wash over you, a full body, deep sense of gratitude. It could be a good cry, releasing sadness. It could be a good session of some boxing, hitting the air, hitting a pillow, letting out some anger. It could be a good singing along or dancing to a song that moves your spirit. It could be when a realization that forgiveness is possible comes along. There is a new beginning just around the corner, that in this moment you can accept the world just as it is. Hold me, rock me, then release. So my question to you, are you vulnerable and curious enough about being cozy to really let yourself get into the coziness, to really feel what might open up and release? Would you be open to trying one of these practices to support you through the winter? Hugging a pillow, adding an extra blanket to cover your shoulders, starting your day by playing a song that warms up your spirit and gets your heart rate up. Would you give yourself 5 minutes to do this every day? And what would happen if you did? Coziness is a practice. It's a way to open up to joy and open up to sorrow, open up to what is, to accept that winter is here and to not resist the cold, but to prepare for it, to audaciously expect that happiness can flow like a river into our lives in this season, even when the mighty New England rivers are frozen over with ice. Coziness says we will not freeze. We will not stop growing, stop healing, stop living simply because sometimes we are afraid. Coziness says, I will, I can, I want, not to strive, but to rest, to care for ourselves, to offer warmth and acceptance to ourselves and others, to be kind, to be curious. As the mystery of this darkest season beckons, coziness says, yes to the unknowns, yes to the wonders of this world, and may it be so.